We'll continue here with a moment of silence. All right, thank you. Moving on then to the additions to the agenda. There is one addition under personnel, Joey Hershey's resignation. Is there a motion to approve the addition?
Also is the addition of the elementary counselor. Is Galen there?
Yes,
And I'm sorry, I forgot her name. I don't
Jordan Dunn. Jordan Dunn.
Okay.
D-U-N-N.
All right, so those two additions under personnel. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those opposed, say aye. Motion carried. All right, now we'll move on to reports. Mrs. Hutley.
I don't have anything to add to my report, unless you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Oliver.
The only thing I'd add is that our league track meet, wasn't our league track meet, it was our host, the meet that we hosted on Friday. We have a new school record. Peyton Wirtz broke the school record in the 8th grade 1600 meter run. So did a good job on that. She's still got a chance to break that even more at the league meet tomorrow. So we're hoping for good things. We're hoping for good weather is what we're hoping for. So I'd also like to remind everyone, if you just let us know, either contact me or the office to let us know if you're going to be in attendance for our promotion a week from tonight at 7 o'clock. So other than that, I don't have anything to add. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
I would echo that, except ours is obviously Sunday at 2. So it would be, so we know how many chairs and whether you're gonna be on the stage or elsewhere, depending on how many. So if you could just, well, you could email Cheryl, but you can also email me. It's either way, with whatever you want.
Okay. Mr. Craig.
I have nothing further to add to my report. You have any questions?
Josh, you have anything?
I don't have anything, but happy to answer questions.
Great.
Is all the phone switched over now then? Is it all pretty much done?
We're still waiting on Maple Hill.
Okay.
We'll be doing that later this month.
Great. No, we'll see Morgan and Tyler here, so we'll move on from it. Moving on then to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Kelly moved and Tony seconded. All those opposed, say aye. Motion carried. All right, then moving on to old and new business. Bond and facilities. Brad, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Just the shared information from the Jim Culligan with ASA Communications, the progress report that you all should have gotten. And the parent survey went out. He said he's got 140, I believe, that have come back so far. We have 5 board members that have turned in their surveys, so just encourage you, if you haven't, to complete that. And he's going to be meeting and talking with the high school. Jan has put together a focus group, and thank you for doing that. And they'll be able to meet with them on Wednesday to talk about some things that would include students as well as also some staff. And then the staff survey that was distributed a week ago had 54 and teachers, staff, administrative respondents, and he gave them some information, highlights from the current staff survey. It indicates that a large number of registered voters did not fully understand the bond. With its remedies and value to the education of district students, 33% indicated 20 million is the most popular bond, with 22% for 25 million bond and 20% for a 15 million bond. 58% like the concept of a single attendance center, and 31% for 2 attendants. And efficient buildings was marked as the most needed among the 5 key needs to be remedied by the board. Some timelines and goals. He will go ahead and continue to put information together. He's been interviewing lots of people as well, random interviews, as well as making himself available to others via phone and or what he's been able, to do at different locations in our district. And you can see the April, May, then get into the information that will be analyzed and then contribute to the long-term planning for the district. And then in late May, early June, use the data to develop and fine-tune the bond proposal and test with registered voters once constructed, plan for a thorough and effective marketing education campaign. The other piece of that then, just as we look forward with the timeline, August, we need to have a decision made about what bond proposal we're going to be moved forward with to meet the guidelines for the State Department of Education and going through their timelines and publications in the paper and et cetera. So those are things that are available and what he's continuing to look at. And then in that, we also had a continuation. If we would continue with the present, it just depends on the mills in regards to the payment, but it's in between 9 and 11 mills of bond and interest, and that would produce, in the information from Piper Sadler, between 8 to 10 million if we just continued with the present amount. The last piece of this particular information item was the fact that we did discuss, I take it back, there's more than that, but we did talk about a return on the structural engineer from Mitten. And so there's lots of information in there. And I would encourage you to go through it. The thing that it does say on both the junior high and the high school old portion are their structurally sound buildings. There's some things to do, recommendations that they ask us to do and to look at in the future that can be continued. But the fact that they're structurally sound, there's some things with the roof. So I've asked that the roof at the high school be able to be included in the energy performance contract as needing to be replaced because there was some issues with that, with the chimney and what was happening with that. The other piece that would be put in there was there is one spot that's probably got 2 dime-sized spots of possible mold growth at the back of the stage. And so those areas at the back of the stage, near the chimney as well as by the elevator, are going to be this Wednesday, I believe is when the person's coming, and have an air quality control test done on that to ensure that there's no mold and take care of those things. But that was on image 27 as noted. But there's things that are included in that I think were really good. David Burvin used to be the board president of Valley Heights School District, so he understands schools. He understands, like when we were talking about a pier to put in at the front near the junior high area, near one of the columns. He said, "Hey, look, it's $8,000. Board president, it's not worth it to fix a crack. The building is solid." And he said both of those buildings will help us long-term on a lot of things. The one thing that I did, both from ASA, from Jim Colligan, and talking with others, the idea of hiring now a construction manager at risk. And that construction manager at risk, 80% of the schools are now using this method. The advantage is we have one contact. We're not dealing with subs when it comes to the construction, and it's a guaranteed max price. So there's no no price increases or change orders. That's all on them in a contingency. They help us in working with the architect and fact checking, because if you remember what one of the complaints was, well, the architect, you haven't had a structural engineer check it, the architect paid a certain percentage, and so who's ensuring that we need to really do that? And so the construction manager at risk helps to do that and creates that accountability. I've talked to HTK about it. They've worked with construction management at risk groups of people that we've had at our board meetings. And so there is a process, and then we would go through that process. The board would select who they want based upon qualifications, previous jobs, and interviews. The old way of building, the design, build way, has distinct disadvantages as you must go with the lowest qualified bidder. And there have been some issues with this method when completing previous projects. The weight room down at the end there, is it the right compaction? Did they do the right thing? It was a low bid person, the construction manager at risk, would help hedge your bet that it was done right and correctly. So there's things that I think that we need to really consider, and would like to get the board's feedback about that. And then the last piece is just that the state aid for bond and interest, the school finance plan, it looks like, I have not seen officially yet signed into law, but there's a possibility that we could get 25% state aid due to the fact that they took Fort Leavenworth out of the funding policy in regards to bond and interest since they pay no taxes. And so that's, when I find out more about that, I'll make sure to report to the board, which would be a huge factor for us as we move forward. But I just would like to get your feelings about the idea of moving forward with the construction management risk, and we go forward with that.
So is that a decision that we'll be voting on, or is that something you're just gonna go do some research and bring some possibilities back to us? Is there an example of who it would be, what kind of company would do that? Do you have any names? I don't know what that is.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, sure. VHS Construction Shutters, they were construction management risk with Brandon County, or are. Then they're also Universal builders that from Kansas City that were at some of our board meetings. We've had other builders, Hutton from Wichita has shown interest and been in attendance at some of our meetings. McCowan Gordon has been at our meetings and some of the things when we were going through the initial bond possibility, they were there. So all those builders and all those people have, HDK has worked with them all.
Okay.
And so they have an idea, and what we would do is then we would go ahead and we would have to go through the process. There's a process, and I think I included in either the packet or addendum to the packet that what the CMAR process is. It's very distinct. They have to provide a budget. They have to go through an interview process. We would utilize HDK to help us with those things. And then they say specific things of what they're going to do and how that works. So, and once that would, then we would make a decision with the board in regards to if we want to hire this person or not.
Okay. Do you have something, Kelly?
I was just going to say it's a pretty standard process that I know, just even on post-secondary education level, that they use for projects, and it moves the project usually a little further along or a little quicker if you can too. because you're having the construction and the contractor working at the same time as the architect. So you don't have the architect build these plans and then on the construction side, they're saying, oh, that doesn't quite work, we need to change it, so then you're going back and changing things from the architect's design. So, yeah.
Does it require committing funds? I mean, if we don't pass a bond, are we required to pay them something, or does anybody know? Is that part of the
Yeah,
interview process?
if you officially hire them,
If you
the
hire them,
process, no. But they put in their pre-bond amounts.
I see.
How does that work with timing, Brad? Like, so we're in May, we have to have a decision by August. For a construction manager at risk, I guess what timing do we have to look at to have one, if we were considering doing it, brought before the board, you know, because then the board's gonna have to vote first on whether or not we wanna go with a construction manager at risk, and then we have to conduct interviews and all of this. I can see this being time consuming. I'm just wondering how much benefit is this gonna provide us, in our time constraint? Like, do we need to look at special board meetings if we're considering this?
Well, I could find out more information, but those guys work with it on a consistent basis, and so they can move pretty quickly, is what I understood. And the interview piece could be from a special board meeting if we chose to do it. And then, as I said, what they can help us do is, if we go through this and then as HTK, if you remember, they made those volumes of particular different projects and options and things. The construction manager at risk can say, well, no, you don't have to do that. We can do this, and it's going to cost this much. Those type of things. It's just a third-party oversight that is hired by the Board of Education.
I say we ought to look for one and find one. I mean, start that process anyway, so it's ready for the next board meeting. Would you guys agree, or?
I would agree,
Okay. Sounds like that's a go, Brad.
Okay, I will start the process and see, get a lot more information, include anything on Friday notes, and if we need to have a special board meeting or whatever with that. But appreciate it, and I think it will be helpful to us.
Any other then discussion on the bond facilities before we move on?
Do you know, Brad?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
but I'm just going to say that Don Frank's email should be also out there, that what he had given and his thoughts about that. It coincides a lot with the one location that 58% so far like the concept of a single attendance center that Jim had found out.
Okay. Jim,
I was gonna ask you, Brad, do you know if ASA is gonna present at the next board meeting, or do they have plans to?
If he's going to be available at the next board meeting to present,
Yeah.
I would assume that he will have more information, because what I understand, again, April, May, then he would start getting all the research and information together and start looking how it will be. But yes, he is going to be, because it is May already, and he'll start getting that information together and help us start proposing what we want to look at our long-term goal.
okay. Callie, did you have anything to add? I don't want to leave you out.
No, I think that sounds good.
Okay. All right. If everyone's good there, then we'll move on. Next on the agenda then is the variance line. Brad?
Sorry. Galen has provided information on the variance line that's included in your packet. It's just making a small change in the line to include McFarland, go to Maple Hill. It more adequately equalizes classes, and if I share the screen, you can then see the projections. Presently, it looks like that we could have somewhere around 44 in differences, 108 in Alma, and Maple Hill 64. And you can see the class breakdowns and numbers. And if we did, Galen is with the out of district, but there may be some that out of district that are closer that we need. But somewhere around 8 to 12, we could, if we change the variance line. And so that information, and then the question then for us is what the plan is. What's the long-term goal? Again, the downside would be that it gives more justification to keeping Maple Hill open. If that's a long-term plan, then we should do it. But if not, is that we're it may be for a year, it may be for 2 or 3 years. What happens, it may be for 15 years if the bond doesn't pass. So if the bond passed, it still would take some time to construct and probably would still have students at Maple Hill. But think that it's worthy that we talk about that. It's important to equalize those classes and look at that because we've been up front with teachers about, a class of 6, which is a combo class, but compared to a teacher in Alma Elementary that's teaching 22. And so the fairness and those things. So just wanted to go ahead, and it is an action item, and get you guys' feelings.
Yes. I'll start then with the long-term scope of what we're trying to accomplish. I feel like hiring ASA has been a part of gathering information as to what our communities want us to do for a long-term approach. I don't want to move a variance line for 1 year, have the communities tell us what they want for a bond, go pass a bond, and then that variance line means nothing because we have a combined attendance center, or we don't. So I guess my thoughts are moving it for 1 year to move kids one place and then moving it again the next year to move kids back around. It's an option for them to move currently, correct? I mean, they can request to move and we have not told anybody no. But I don't know if that cures our district needs by forcing kids to go to Maple Hill when that hasn't been the desire of them in the past. They've had the option to go and they chose not to. They still can. We can recommend a few of them do from there to help with class sizes. I guess my thought is, I don't know that I'm for changing it right now. If something happens with the bond and it doesn't go through and we need to readdress it, I think that's possible and pretty easy to do later, but that's my feedback. So, anybody else have anything?
We would provide busing either way, right?
Correct.
So whether they come here or go to, is it, I guess, for purposes of like future outlook, I don't see us being viable having 2 pre-K through 4, pre-K through 5 locations. I just don't see that viable for our district. I mean, eventually we're gonna have to get to 1, pre-K through 5, in order for us to be sustainable. So a variance line for 1 year or 3 years or whatever, I don't know. Because I guess how I look at it, ultimately, even if a bond does pass, I don't see us immediately closing schools, making transitions, because you're gonna have to go through the process of potentially building if that's necessary. I mean, if I don't see any way currently, as our structures are laid out, that we can have, unless we at least have 3 locations, I don't see us being able to have enough space for all of our kids to start pre-K through 12th grade where they're all all the classes are combined. We just don't have the space at 2 locations. So with that being said, I think there's gonna be a transition time when we have, if a bond were to pass, we would have transition time where we'd need that additional space anyway. And that could take, I don't know how long, depending on the bill and the scope, could take a year to get a full new facility up, ready to go for the following school year, 2 years. I don't know, depends on the scope of the project, but I guess my thought is, for the sake of our teachers and equalizing class sizes for students, I don't see a problem necessarily with changing the variance line for a year. They're gonna be bused either way. I don't see that as a huge reflection for our whole district, as we're making this a solid location that's gonna maintain and be a location with USD 329 in the long-term future, because bottom line, it's not. We don't have the student population to support 2 separate K through 5 locations, pre-K through 5. So I think provided the public knows that and understands that that's not sustainable, what we do in the interim, I don't think has a huge effect.
Well, what are you saying? I can't follow what you've said here. You've argued to not change it, and now you've argued that it's okay to change it? I must not have heard you.
I'm just saying, changing the variance line for a short period of time isn't gonna have an effect on our long-term growth goal. Because the population that currently we have for students, we can't justify having 2 pre-K through 6 locations. 2 of them. We just can't. So we're gonna cut down in size. We have to. I don't see any way around that.
Any other communication, thoughts, feedback?
Other districts change these lines every year because they need to even out the numbers. I mean, it's not a big decision, it's not an unusual thing. I know that doesn't speak to the long-term plan. I'm not sure if that comes into play with this. If you whole district's gonna be in flux, whether we pass the bond that will pass or we don't pass a bond. It's
So you think we ought to?
well, it's hard to. How do you, or please tell me how you justify paying a teacher to teach 8 kids and paying a teacher to teach 19 kids? It's the equal pay, or not equal pay. I don't, you know where.
No, I agree with it. Immediate need. So this is an immediate need. It's obvious. And it keeps teachers' stress level down, for lack of a way better term.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's an educational term that I've lost, but that's in my world stress. And I think, I totally agree that the line changing this year and the line changing next year really is not in the scope of things a big deal.
Okay. Anyone else?
It doesn't seem like a big deal unless you're a parent. It's you have kids going to one school 1 year and you have kids
I
going.
can't disagree.
So
Right.
and then they have friends in one school, and now I've got to go to a different school, and now I've got to have different peers at that point in time. If it's changing back and forth constantly, that's what I guess my point is. If we change it and it's this way until we do the next phase, okay, then I'm okay with that. I don't want to change it and change it again next year and change it the year after that, as we're trying to move forward towards a longer goal. I don't think that this impacts, to Jerome's point, I don't think this necessarily impacts the long-term goal of the district as far as what we do with facilities. But I don't want us to change it in the year and have families flip-flopping, because I don't think that's really good for kids to have that difference. I mean, we talk about we don't want them to transition from building to building as many times as they do now, so I don't want them to have to switch schools constantly either.
I guess from the numbers standpoint, I don't see how that would how we would have it year to year.
I'm not saying.
I know, but that's where my thought process is.
My
The
point-
numbers have said this since I've sat in this chair.
Oh,
I don't think that's changing.
No, I'm just saying I don't
So,
want it to constantly change.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with that part of it.
Callie, you have any feedback?
I mean, I think I agree that at this point, it's probably not the best idea to change it with the uncertainty of what's gonna happen. And once we have a little more certainty, then it would be something we could look at down the road if needed.
I guess, so if I was to put a poll out there, I feel like we're a little split. When does this decision need to be made for you in order to make those changes if we were to approve one? Galen, do you have any feedback on that? And it's-
Always the sooner the better, we can plan for it. But
Well, it is an action item tonight. We can make action if somebody so chooses. So. You all make good points. I can go either way on it as well, so it's not a big.
Just think the need's there.
Yeah, I think it's,
I mean,
for teachers' sake, for our kids' sake, I mean, being in a class of 8 versus a class of 21, there's a huge difference in the learning, and I don't know,
Yes.
it's a lot more stress.
My feedback though is the parents have the opportunity to choose where their kids go to school currently. They can choose a variance to switch, correct?
that's good.
So my point is, if they've already chosen for their kid to either go to Maple Hill or go to Alma, they've made that decision, that's where they want. Okay, so we move the variance lines, that is still an opportunity for them to say, okay, well, I live in McFarland, but I want to come back to Alma, that's where my kid goes, that's where he wants to go, or they want to go. I'm not going to move them for all the reasons that Kelly came up with, and boom, we are signing a bunch of variances to come back to the school that they were already going, and we really didn't accomplish our feat. The only way to truly fix the problem you're talking about is to get rid of our grade school and put it all together. That's the fix. This moving district lines to try and force an issue is really smoke and mirrors. I mean, if I'm in Alma and I want my kid to go to Alma, I'm going to sign it. I mean, my kid goes to Maple Hill. She had friends in Maple Hill. I signed it to go to Maple Hill. So I guess if the opportunity is presented to the parents that they have that opportunity to switch, then switch.
I mean, that's the other option, is to encourage families to switch, not force them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just to help over the next few years. I don't know.
I think that.
The student population in Maple Hill, I don't see increasing from that area over the next couple of years.
I would hate to say, I guess, when you get down to it, it's what's best for the kids. And unfortunately, that stress gets put on our teachers, what's best for the kids. And I don't believe that moving kids from school to school or moving variance lines and forcing kids to move from their current comfortable zone is best for the kids. I find that very stressful for kids. And I don't want to put them in that situation, so hence why I'm not necessarily for it. If somebody can convince me otherwise over the next 12 months, while we try and explore an opportunity with or without a bond that combines our middle school or our grade schools, I'm all ears. But I believe the board's long-term goal is to do away with Maple Hill Grade School and find a solution that works to combine them. Does switching the variance lines today mean a hill of beans to that? We've been a 2 elementary school for a long time. What's another year to figure out all of our plans? But it is a motion, if it is an action item, if somebody wants to make a motion to change them, then they're more than welcome to. Brad, do you have any other feedback? If not, I'll be
I
moving
don't,
on.
other than, I do not.
Okay.
I move to change the variance.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to change the variance line. All those in favor, say
Can I
aye.
ask a question before we vote?
Yes.
Can I have
Discussion.
discussion
Uh-huh.
a little bit before we vote? Because I don't know how I'm gonna vote, so that's why I'm asking, I'm delaying a little bit. We're doing it just to even out classes, or are we doing it to? I'm trying to think of all the different angles with families and teachers and the students themselves. So I guess I'm
My thoughts were
more about.
to even out the classes for the teachers, because ultimately, we can't continue to operate, and I know
We
I
know
like
that.
beat it over
Right,
the
we know
head,
that.
but
We
we
know
can't
this.
continue to operate where we are.
Right, we know
So
we know
knowing
that.
that is our long-term goal, in the short term, to me, it doesn't have a huge reflection, because it's not like we're trying to justify keeping these two schools open.
No,
We
I know
we
that.
can't do that.
I know that. I'm just saying, in the short term though, it is a big impact to a family and to a student. So,
Okay. Is there any further discussion prior to vote? Okay. All those in favor of changing the variance line, please say aye.
Aye.
Would you please do a roll call, because Don Frank just came in.
Okay.
I see, I know what the-
Probably needs to.
Dawn? Are you there, Dawn? Yes, no, I can't get him, so, we currently have 4 for yes, and all those in favor, all those not in favor, please, same sign. Aye.
Aye.
Don dropped off.
Dawn dropped off, so motion carries. All right. Then moving on to safety and security at the WHS crosswalk to the BOAG buildings. Discussion. So was there some discussion or somebody concerned about safety and security at the crosswalk?
Well, I brought it up to Brad, but I didn't know if he was gonna talk on it or not. Just as a thought, I didn't know if any individuals would be interested in talking with, or having Brad talk with the city about, putting in some sort of crosswalk, barrier, or flashing lights, or speed bumps around the intersection of where the high school students go across the street, the open street, to the ag building. I figured it was at least a discussion with the city to see if they'd be interested in doing that or providing some funding for that. since
As
it
far
is
as
on
like
city
painting
streets.
a crosswalk on the ground or what?
No, there's a crosswalk on the ground, but like speed bumps,
Okay.
flashing lights, crossbars,
It's a three-way stop, right?
something, yeah.
I'd like to hear the car count there.
Has there been some safety issues that we haven't heard about?
Right,
No, but it's an open street.
sure it is. It's been an open street for,
Yeah.
ever since Alma was
I
here.
understand,
If
but
it
just
ain't-
because
if it
there's
ain't
never
broke,
been an
don't
accident
fix it.
doesn't mean there couldn't be an accident.
So we're protecting ourselves against ourselves? Is that what we're doing here?
And we're protecting the students against
Against-
potential drivers that swipe and stop signs.
I don't,
I mean, that's my thought process, but I mean, student safety and health is a big concern for me, so,
Right.
I mean,
As it
that's
should
where I'm
be.
coming from.
As it should be, I don't have a problem with that. I guess that was where I was going to start was, are we currently having issues? Is there currently concern? Do we have, has there been any registered issues with that crosswalk, Ms. Utley?
Not to my awareness.
Okay. I think, so it was, I believe, if you go back into board notes, I believe it was discussed a long time ago, because that wasn't a stop sign there for a long time. It was actually just a yield and you come around, and I think they changed that to a stop sign and worked with the city on that. So I think it has been discussed in the past. Made it a three-way stop in order to make sure, I guess I'm trying to, since if you're coming down Main Street, if you don't stop, you're gonna have a head-on collision with something, house. I guess the other ways may be a little bit more concerning, but I don't know. If there hasn't been an issue, I guess I'm not terribly concerned. Do you currently have protocols in place for kids that walk back and forth, or
Just
both
crosswalk
ways.
walls.
look
Yeah.
both ways before you cross the street?
And sometimes they don't. Sometimes it seems like the more precautions you put in place, the lazier responsible walking becomes.
Maybe
Isn't
we oughta
that crazy?
Jan, do some training
I could do
early in
some,
the school year.
I guess I don't know that it is a problem, but I can't verify it isn't. I haven't had any reports since I've been there of issues. Except, I do think sometimes kids get,
Yeah.
distracted and just assume that everyone's gonna stop, which they should. But, I guess I could, I haven't asked, I wasn't really
So could we
aware
have,
that it was an interest, so
is our SRO swamped during a couple of those times? Could they just stand out there and watch for a little
Yeah.
bit and see if you couldn't look over the next 30 days, like the next 2 weeks,
I think that'd be a good perspective to have.
and just see what our SRO thinks? Maybe they
Sure.
can come up with a plan that would help us out. Or they
No
might not
problem.
see anything. Is that acceptable? Okay.
I'll
Cool.
do it.
You good then? Everybody good on that? Callie, you have any feedback?
No, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Dawn, are you on? Okay. So then, next, transportation software update.
Just wanted you to be aware of some of the, I put in my notes, what they are and the cost. And so just continue to look forward and see what we can do in regards to transportation software. Just wanted to give you an update.
Great. Hopefully something comes out of there. I'm not opposed to spending money in that area if it's something that would help you guys be more efficient, so. Any other thoughts or? Hate to move too quickly, but no reason to stick on it if we don't need to. All right. COVID reopening plan, exiting COVID reopening plan. Brad?
We have, from the beginning of this, we've made the vision that we're going to control what we can control. And so we were going to continue to do that in regards to our COVID, exiting COVID reopening plan. It would start as far as the end of school on May 19th. We would look to do HVAC plasma scrubbers that can be paid through ESSER money. It cleans 99% of the indoor air. And then also have talked with our energy performance contract people about what all things we can do, and they're breaking down specifics of what costs may be for ESSER money and or what's eligible or not. We would continue to disinfect with the schedule we have. We've got the Victory backpacks we've been able to use, and they've done a great job, custodians and maintenance with that piece. It helps with allergies and flu and all viruses. And it does, bottom line, what we want to continue to do through this entire, anything we do is keep students and staff face-to-face and face-to-face school, which they have done a tremendous job. want to really emphasize how great a job our students, staff, parents, everyone have done. Because I would venture to say that we've been in school, other than a small hiccup before around November, with the 2-week out at the high school, compared to everybody else in the area and state, as long or the longest of anybody. And I think that the things that we hear all the time about learning loss, we're not going to see the learning loss because our kids were in face-to-face school. And our kids were safe because they were in face-to-face school. So huge kudos to everybody that was involved in that, from the board, administration, our classified and licensed staff have done a great job. Also then on the return to normal, it's a choice of wearing masks or not from that point on, after May 19th. The open facilities to patrons and outside groups, our weight room cards would all be shut off, and we'd start fresh or new with those on June 1st. They must reapply if they paid the $30 fee, and that would just be honored for the coming year's fees. And continuation of the facility is not open to students only. All activities must have adult supervision, which has been our consistent policy in regards to that. So it's pretty concise, and I think it meets everyone's needs, and would ask the board to consider approving it.
Is there any discussion? Kelly?
I just have a question. So I appreciate this, and I think this is a good plan for us to move forward with. I had a question about the plasmas, the HVAC plasma scrubbers. So, assuming those have a lifespan beyond, say, 3 years, and we close a building, or we close another building, or something like that, and move people around, are those able to be moved, or can we do something else with them? I mean, I hate to spend money on something that we're going to use for a couple of years.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kelly, and yes, they can be moved.
Okay.
And the other thing that they've indicated, it can be relatively easy to do. I've never done it. I can't say that. Don would know better than I about the particulars, but it's relatively easy to install and to move. The other thing is that when Energy Solutions Professional presents in the near future to us about the performance contract, they will make sure to include or not include long-term goals. In other words, if we're going to close a building, they won't have that included in the estimate.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you.
That's a great question. Because, Kelly, just to give you an example, we've got CARES or sparks money from through the county and federal paid for the thermal imaging cameras for taking temperatures.
Right.
And we have one at Paxco Middle School. And administratively, we've talked about, well, what do we want to do with it? And at this point, just not knowing what we're going to do with kids yet, because we may need Paxco Middle School for students in the future, if that's part of the bond scenario and how it all works. But we would leave it there, and then we can move it as well to like the another additional spot at the junior high, or another spot at the high school when people get into the gym. And there's a lot more things you can do with them other than just taking temperature. But
Correct.
so yeah, that is something that we definitely will consider.
Great.
Thank you. I remember that when we purchased them.
Cool.
Hey, Justin.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, as far as the masks are concerned and our reopening plan, I mean, I've heard some feedback from patrons questioning why we haven't, taken the masks away and everything, but I would just like to point out that the biggest, for anybody who I guess is listening to this, but the biggest concern about, schools reopening and the biggest mental health problems have not been because of masks being worn in school, but it's because kids have been isolated at home. And we have not done that. Our kids are in school, they're doing their activities, regardless of having to wear masks. They've all been very successful at coming back, and our schools and our staff have been very supportive of that and keeping our kids safe. I know that there was some concern about the safety of kids wearing masks and, you know, is there an issue with that and how does that affect kids and breathing? But to my knowledge, and maybe Brad can correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't had any adverse effects from kids wearing masks during sporting events or during school hours, to my knowledge. Have we, Brad?
No, I'm not aware of anything specifically related to that.
Okay. So, I mean, I think, and I guess I'm saying this more because I've had a lot of feedback just on why we haven't taken away masks. But I would sure hate for our high schoolers to have something happen. Somebody tests positive and then we can't do graduation. I would hate for something to happen before softball, baseball, track, regionals, districts, and all that, and then they can't compete. And so we have so little time left, so I guess I just wanted to give my feedback as far as I don't like masks and wearing them. It's not my favorite thing, but we've kept our kids healthy and we've kept them with their peers and we've kept them safe and in school. And so I think that is the goal. I think kudos to all of the staff and the kids for doing that. And I think how many days we have left in school? Like 8, 7, somewhere in there. So
Yep.
anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
I think, I echo that. I also want to say, we may be a little slower to get to this point, but we're the only school, especially in the Mid-East League, that are allowing people back into our facilities the way it was prior to COVID hitting. So it takes a little more time to do that anyways. And
Yes.
thank you for our school to give us the opportunity to let our patrons back in our facilities. I think it says a lot, so. Yep. Kelly?
I was just gonna say, to Callie's point though, we're not doing away with masks, right, like tomorrow.
No, it's the 19th,
It's
what it says
after,
on here.
after they're done, after the school year has ended.
Right.
Right. And that's what I'm saying,
Yes.
in support of.
Right.
Yep, cool.
I am as well, Callie.
Did I dare ask Dawn? Dawn?
I was gonna say, my kids probably are not in support of what I'm saying right now, but oh well.
My kids don't care, so.
Yes, Justin.
All right, how we doing, buddy?
Did you ask, what do you need?
I just was making sure if you had any feedback here. I don't want to skip over anybody.
No,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay, thank you. It is an action item, so is there a motion to approve our exiting COVID plan?
I so move to exit, or to approve our exiting COVID reopening plan as outlined by administration.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those opposed, please say aye. Motion carried. All right. Next then is republishing of the budget. Brad?
Just FYI, anytime we are in a position other than federal funds that have some reimbursements and some things that we can go over our authority as far as authorization to spend, when you publish the budget in August, it then is the amount that we cannot go above as far as spending. You can move things around within line items and with different funds, but you can't go above that specific amount. So with our situation, when we turned in the budget previously, we hadn't had a teacher hired. We hired a teacher that we didn't had received more money as far as on the salary schedule, and so the difference in other funds we can and be able to be spread it out, but to make up the difference. But what we have to do is republish the Code 11 preschool aged at risk money. It's very specific to that. So Cheryl worked well with that, and diligently with that, done a good job with that. Been in contact with KSDE about it, and they're like, you gotta do it. there. So, there you go.
Okay.
Less to spend money, we gotta be able to do it. But it isn't, quote, costing us anywhere, it's just the fact that we've got to publish what we're doing.
Okay. I move we go to republishing the budget as administration has submitted. It's been moved and seconded. All those opposed, please say aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Brad. Moving on then to the ESSER2 plan.
The ESSER2 plan, we will be turning in, submitting a plan to utilize federal funds to pay for personnel and portions of personnel, the elementary counselor position, to pay for the grant percentages that we are being responsible for the school resource officer and for the mental health grant person, that's Emily Henderson. And then a portion of the plan is, as we move forward, then we would take our HVAC system, for instance, which is a acceptable, can't think of the word, anyway, acceptable to be able to use that to pay for it, and use that in our second portion. The state has continually said, well, the first thing you need to address is learning loss. And my argument, as said in the beginning of any COVID reopening plan, is we won't have learning loss because we've been doing face-to-face school. So we are going to continue to look at the data in regards to needing summer school and some other things. But I think when we look at our data when it comes back, it will show that that our learning loss is not going to be as what others have projected that haven't been in face-to-face school. So at that end as well, just on, I'm going to share it on my screen with you again here, to show before we could do this, and I had argued that we would be able to reward our people for what they did. And continue to push that narrative. However, if you look at number 15 here, other activities, this is authorized use for ESSER2 funds that are necessary to maintain the operation of and continuity of services. And it says, no, specifically bonuses are explicitly prohibited. Well, with that, we had the plan to do a PD to pay for, so that they could then have a stipend, and if an auditor came, that is allowable, because the other thing that the language is, number 2, which I continually put in our plan, is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. And so that is something that we've done, as I said, by doing face-to-face school and meeting our goal of not having learning loss, which is our goal as well. But long story short, now what has happened is it just came out Friday that the Kansas legislature said that boards can pay up to $500 stipend for COVID-related and use of ESSER funds to do it. So that's what we want to do. We want included in the plan. Prior to, that's why it was on the board agenda. We had a plan to possibly do some PD after the end of school, but we would like not to do that now and just be able to provide for our people a $500 stipend for them in their response and preparation and prevention of COVID, which is listed in the ESSER authorized uses and have now been authorized by state legislator to do that. And that amounts to around $40,000. So just want to make sure that we get that okayed and have that action item as we move forward with our ESSER funds.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the ESSER2 plan.
Is there a second? Jim? It's been moved and seconded. All those opposed, please say aye. Motion carried. Thank you, and thank you to our staff. It's well deserved.
Amen.
Okay, then next is propane, approving the propane bid from the Alma Co-op. Fred?
We did have several, and that's included in your packet. You can see the other bids. They were significant below bid at $1.11 a gallon. And also the fact that they indicated that they could go lower if that was something that happened. So that's available to us, and they want to put something, and I can't remember exactly the term, I'm sorry, I don't have the information in front of me, on our propane tanks to see what's going on. But with regulate, anyway.
Tank level monitors.
Yeah, there we go. So I would just, everyone had a fair chance to bid on it, and we had several come in, and I would recommend we utilize Alma Co-op for the propane bid.
I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Alma Co-op's propane bid. All those opposed, please say aye. Motion carried. Great, thank you. All right, moving on into personnel. I move we go into executive session to discuss the latest proposal for increasing base pay rate from teachers pursuant to the exception from employer-employee negotiations under COMA, and the open meeting will resume here in the board meeting at 7:15.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those opposed, please say aye. Motion carried.
So everybody's gonna, we don't
Yeah.
have a choice.
We're locked in here, so you guys can.
Didn't have to leave.
All right, so moving on then to personnel ads. I move to accept the changes in personnel as submitted by administration as follows. Approve emergency substitute teacher of Clinton Firstbrook. Approve the employment of Cody Gilmore for WHS assistant football, bus driver, and teacher aide. And accepting the resignations and retirements of Jim Broth from bus driver, Roberta Teal, bus driver, transportation secretary, Bobby Murray as junior high math teacher, athletic director, head junior high volleyball, girls basketball, and track. Accept the resignation of Jamie Rogers for assistant boys basketball for the junior high, Jessica Imthern as junior high assistant volleyball coach, Carrie Beckman as a high school assistant secretary, and Linda Drennan as a food service substitute. And Joey Hershey as PE, elementary PE, and high school and junior high wrestling. Also in that, approve the transfer of duties of Kristen Broth from the junior high library media tech to the high school library media tech.
Justin, there was another K-8 counselor?
And then also the addition of the elementary counselor Jordan Dunn. Did I miss any?
I think that's all.
Okay, there's your motion. Is there a second? Tony?
So Kelly got it.
Kelly got it? Okay. Justin moved and Kelly seconded. All those opposed, please say aye. Motion carried. All right. Superintendent Board Forum. Brad, you're up.
Thanks. Just wanted to report that Western Governors University in Missouri has awarded Jennifer Mumpower at the Mapleville Elementary a little community library as a $250 grant winner. So congratulations to Jennifer. And we had a Zoom with her and Western Governors University and the students, and it was really cool. So congratulations. One thing also I'd like to make mention of is that the first time in the school history that the Charger, the WHS newspaper, received all-state distinction from the Kansas Scholastic Press Association for its news publication. So congratulations to Mr. Prager and the Charger staff on that all-state distinction. Other than that, that's all I have.
Great. Kelly.
I didn't have anything. Congratulations, though, to both of those areas.
Jim?
I want to say big thank you goes out, I think, to the teachers, our support staff, our administration. I think this year has been a very challenging year, and I think all of our staff stepped up to the plate and did a lot that made us succeed this year. So I really appreciate all of their efforts. And finally, I just want to encourage all the board members to attend the graduation and promotions. I think it's really important. It shows support for the students, support for their families and our community.
Thank you. Tony?
I would only say thank you to those resignations. There's a lot of years of service in who you just named off there, and we haven't had anything said, but there's a couple of people here that years of dedicated service, and I appreciate, the board appreciates it, and I echo everything we've done to get to this point in this year, and everything our teachers and staff have had to go through and deal with. It did not go unnoticed, and we obviously appreciate it.
Jerome. Callie.
I think I echo the same thing. Thank you to all those of the names on that list of the resignations, and thank you again for teachers and staff. Done amazing this year. Thanks for keeping our kids in school. So that's it.
Dawn?
I don't have anything.
I don't either. All right, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Been moved and seconded. All those opposed, please say aye. Motion carried. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
They had a meeting.
Consider it as a,
Yeah.
I won't be there.
Tomorrow, Emily, okay?
Bottom, yep, and that's.
I won't be there.
Would you expect him to be not fine?
I always